Welcome, everyone. Today, our event is going to touch on some human rights violations going on in Turkey. Hundreds of thousands of people have been affected by what's going on in Turkey. My name is Beyza, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Before introducing our panelists, I want to talk about some of the human rights violations going on in Turkey. After the coup attempt in 2016, the Turkish government started to wrongly accuse and imprison their citizens, mainly focusing on the people of the Hizmet movement. This also included anyone who had the slightest affiliation with the movement, which could be something as small as donating to a Hizmet school. Hundreds of innocent people have been prosecuted, and others have been left with no other choice than to flee their countries, because if they don't flee now, they would be next on the list of going to prison. Families have resorted to paying unreliable smugglers, crossing dangerous waters with their children, and many other dangerous options. Even those who manage to flee Turkey would often end up with almost nothing in foreign countries. As of today, there have been 96,885 people arrested, 3,003 schools, dormitories, and universities shut down, 21,000 teachers in jail, 4,463 judges and prosecutors dismissed, 189 media outlets shut down, 319 journalists arrested, 118 innocent people abducted, 2,278 victims of torture and maltreatment, 2,000 people killed in operations, and maybe the most alarming statistic, there are 864 children in Turkey's jails. Most of these children know no other way of life. They are spending their childhood in prison, only able to see their fathers on weekends for very limited times. Nothing is being done to take care of them inside prison. They have no access to education, no diapers, no proper food. They aren't even allowed toys, and their mental health is at a huge risk of never being able to recover. According to freedomhouse.org, Turkey currently sits at a score of 32 out of 100 on global freedom and 35 out of 100 on internet freedom. Hopefully, we will be able to talk and shine light on these topics today with our panelists. With us, we have Muazzez Sarikir. She fled Turkey to Thessaloniki, Greece, passing through the Merrell River, and currently lives in the United States. Next, we have Zeynep Cetin. She was born and raised in Turkey, and after her family fell victim to the injustices in Turkey, she had no other choice but to flee the country to the US. Lastly, we have Leyla Yurtsever. She's only in 8th grade, but even at her young age, she too is aware that keeping silent is not an option. Firstly, I would like to start off with listening to our panelists' journey on coming to the United States. Muazzez, would you like to start by sharing your story?
I want to start with thanking everybody for making it possible for us to do this panel. And I want to start with after the coup attempt in July 15th, we started to live in secret with my family. And after 1 year, when our school year started, my dad fled to America since he was the only one who had a visa and he was wanted by the Turkish government at the time. And after 1 year in living secret with my mom and my brother while my dad was in America, we decided to go to Greece using the Evros River because my mom was being wanted by the Turkish government too. After 1.5 years of living in Greece with other Turkish people and seeing everybody's stories there with our family united, we finally came to America.
How did you feel when you had to start living in secret?
Just to say one word, I felt scared and I felt like I wasn't safe and I didn't have a clear future. I didn't know what I was going to be or what was going to happen to my family or the people around me. And it was really hard for me to, especially after my dad left to America, to have friends or just socialize with other people.
Yeah. While you were living in Greece, we know that you were separate from your father. How did that make you feel being separate from your father for 2.5 years?
I always loved my dad so much, especially after he left. I felt a really strong connection to him. I'm really thankful for him and my mom that they were able to still keep us connected by talking every day or every other day through the phone. And I'm just thankful that he was able to come to America without being arrested, and he worked so hard here before we came to be able to give us a great life.
Could you talk a little bit more about what your life in Greece was, what struggles you guys went through, what other people were like, and how you guys were living?
Yeah. So I'm really thankful to especially my mom for not letting us feel helpless or feel the need of money, because since it was really hard working in Greece, most of the families didn't have any jobs or any income they could get from Greece. So the Hizmet movement helped us a lot, and my dad sent money from America, but it still wasn't enough to live in a minimum wage type of life. But still, my mom didn't let us feel that way, and she always let me buy things for art, painting, drawing, or she got me a guitar instead of maybe getting some food, because she really wanted for me and my brother to keep being inspired and not let us be hopeless. And again, I'm really thankful for her, because the other families I saw there, they maybe didn't have the chances that we had or the opportunities that we had, because they were really struggling, and it just broke me so much that this was happening. And this is why I'm doing this with you guys right now, to be able to help them and to be able to be their voice right now. And I saw Ebu Bekir and Gonca Kara before I came to America in Athens. And they lost two of their children, Gülsüm and Mustafa, who was 8 and 6 at the time, while coming through the Evros River. And they just showed me that there was still hope and that everything could happen, but it was just an exam that we had to pass. And I'm just going to keep going strong for them and everyone who is still in Greece, or everyone who went through the same path as me.
Thank you so much, Muazzez. The things that you went through are not easy, and I'm just glad that you guys are able to be safe in the US now, and hopefully other people in the same situations as you will be able to come to the same outcome as you have.
Thank you.
Zeynep, would you like to share your story next?
Of course. So first of all, again, thank you so much for having me on this panel. And I think everyone has a unique story, unique journey, and it's important. It's very crucial for us to listen to as many as we can. So thank you. So back in Turkey, my father was a bureaucrat, and the morning after the coup attempt, he was immediately detained, suspended from his job. And after about 15 days, as we were having dinner, there was a knock on our door, and my brother, who was 9 years old at the time, ran up to the door thinking that it was his friends calling him out to play. But instead, he saw 3 heavily armed police officers. They all had rifles in their hands, asking for his father. And I immediately got him out of the house. And that day, my father was detained. Our house was searched. And about 5 days of unsanitary detainment, my father was imprisoned based on unfounded claims, like having an account in a certain bank, having donated 25 Turkish liras to a charity, and having downloaded an app, a private messaging app, just like WhatsApp. So those were the reasonings, justifications that he was kept in prison for 18 months. So during those 18 months, we would have 2 types of visits: contact visits and non-contact visits. So in contact visits, we would get the chance to sit at a table and hug them, talk to my father and everything. But in non-contact visits, which were more common, we would try to talk through a thick glass with a telephone that did not function properly. So I would go to every single one of these visits just to be able to see that my father was doing okay, that he was not being mistreated, or that he was not being tortured, that his health was fine, that he was fine. And after these contact visits, non-contact visits, and 18 months of imprisonment, he was released. He was first sentenced 7.5 years, if I'm not mistaken, and then he was released until the decision of the higher court on our appeal. So, but just after a few days of his release, we received a notice saying that my mother, who was a handicrafts teacher at the time, was also being put on trial for, again, based on unfounded claims, like having an account in a certain bank. And that was the only thing that she had in her case. So because we did not want to go through same events as we did with my father, we decided to leave our country, and our passports were canceled. So we reapplied for passports, and thankfully we were lucky enough to receive our passports. So my brother, my mother, and I traveled to the US on plane, and my father had to cross the river just like Muazzez and her family. So that's kind of our journey in a nutshell.
Thank you, Zeynep. Can you talk more about what the prison visits were like? What other people that you saw were going through? Anything specific that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so I think, to be honest, there are lots of memories, lots of scenes or images that I can't quite get out of my head. But for the sake of time, I think I'll just briefly tell you guys about the two that stuck out to me the most. So it was at one of those contact visits I mentioned earlier. A ward friend of my father came to our table with a child, with a baby in his arms. So his wife was pregnant earlier, and she just gave birth, and she faxed the father that she and the baby was safe. They were healthy, that the baby was born. And she faxed, because faxing is the fastest way to get news to anyone in prison. And in cases of death and birth, it is definitely mandatory. I mean, definitely mandatory. It's like the law to let that person the news, to give the news to that person, to give the fax to that person as soon as the fax is received. And in this case, even the birth of a baby was kept from the father. So he did not receive any sort of any fax whatsoever. And the first time that he knew of the baby's existence, that the baby was born, was at that contact visit. And obviously he was shocked, he was surprised, and he was happy, he was excited, he was overrun with emotions. So he just grabbed the baby and went from table to table and showed the baby, showed everyone the baby, showed his friends the baby. And I just remember a crowd gathering around him, a crowd of men gathering around him and just looking at the baby and crying and hugging one another, because the baby was safe, because the mom was safe. So that's just one of them. And another one is, again, at that open visits, contact visits. So when the prison guards would turn off the lights, that meant that the visit is over. So every time a light went off, I vividly remember the screams of children. And then I remember seeing them, hog on to their father's legs, begging not to leave them, begging to stay with them for 10 more minutes. So yeah, that's another scene, another memory of the visit.
Horrible things are going on. Thank you so much, Zeynep, for sharing your story, your experiences. Hopefully something changes, our voices will be heard, and these children won't have to suffer any longer. Next, I want to speak to Leyla. She was born and raised in America. She is very much aware of the privilege that she has of being an American citizen and being able to freely talk about these situations. So, Leyla, would you talk about some of your experiences on what is going on in Turkey?
Yeah, so like you said, I definitely have so much privilege being able to say that I've been born and raised here, because I haven't ever experienced anything like any of you guys have. And also, I can also say that I've been born and raised in a country where nothing like this would happen, because we know that, there's a democracy and there's separation of powers, which clearly isn't a thing in Turkey. And also, so 4 years ago when Donald Trump was elected, I think like some of us, or maybe a lot of us, were like worried that he might become a dictator. But like deep down, most of us realized that the US wouldn't allow anything like this to happen because of the separation of power with the judicial branch and, Congress. But that's clearly not existent in Turkey, and it has really gone this far. And so there isn't any freedom of speech or press, and this is because the president of Turkey controls the judicial branch, Congress, basically like every form of government, which is just really astounding and appalling to me because, he's can literally control everything and allows this stuff to happen. And there's, again, no freedom of speech or press. So like the news outlets were shut down, the newspapers were shut down, even tweets, like some people tweet things and they get imprisoned for those tweets. And like some of your parents just for putting money in a bank account. That's honestly just so tragic to me, I would say.
Yes, we're kind of in the same boat. I was also born and raised in America, never had to go through any of the struggles that Muazzez or Zeynep went through. And living in America, it gives a different perspective on what's going on in Turkey and how the people there are still so blind to what is going on. And it's just very upsetting. A specific story, Murat Akçaba, that I also want to talk about. He was a husband and a father to 3 children. He was just a teacher that worked in Hizmet schools, and he didn't have any illegal activity going on. I think he had a bank account in a certain bank that was already like it wasn't illegal. It was a legal bank that he had an account in, and after the coup attempt, some of his friends were starting to get arrested, and he started to fear that he would have to like he was going to get arrested next. So he and his wife started to live in secret. For 2 years, I think that they lived in secret, and they had 3 children, which they didn't send them to school anymore. They couldn't go to hospitals because the minute that they went in the hospital, the government would be notified, and they feared that they were going to get arrested. A specific story that he talked about was when his 3rd child was being born. He said that he wasn't even able to feel the excitement that he had another child, but he was fearful that he was going to get arrested any moment. So they fled, they ran away from the hospital as soon as they could. And after 2 years, they said, "This is enough. We can't live like this anymore. Like, we can't live in secret anymore. We have kids, they need friends, they need education." So they decided to flee to Greece, and they passed through the Merrell River, but sadly their boat had capsized, and his wife didn't know how to swim. He had 3 young children who probably did not know how to swim. And he tried to hold on to his children, but he wasn't able to hold on to them for very long. He only was able to hold on to them for like 10 seconds. And he had to spend those times waiting for someone to save him with hearing his wife's last screams for help because she didn't know how to swim. And she drowned in that river. And he lost his kids, and their bodies are still, his oldest son's body is still not found. But it's very upsetting that people are so blind to what's going on. He's now living in Europe, and he still is very positive and very optimistic. He wants to start teaching again. He's learning the language. And for someone like this to be accused of terrorism, it just doesn't make sense, because he's very obviously just such a good person, and he didn't deserve what happened to them for
I
such
wanted to add about the story, because hearing those stories about people who lost their life through the Evros River just makes me even more scared, and so many times thankful that we were able to go through the Evros River without any casualties or without losing any of our family members. And it is just so cruel that people have to go through this and have to carry this trauma. And I want to talk about another story that inspired me a lot, which is Mesut and Merrell Kachema's story. This story inspired me a lot because my dad was a teacher like Mesut and Merrell Kachema in a school. He used to teach science, and now Mesut and Merrell Kachmas was teachers in his med schools in Pakistan. And after the coup attempt, after some time, they started to get Pakistan intelligence services like ISI to their houses at 1 o'clock at night or every day. And they were asking them, why are you here? And they didn't answer them at all. And one night at 1:30 a.m., they came and they said that they had to take them somewhere, and Mesut and Merrell Kachmas was asking, they were like, why are you taking us? Just tell me, we will cooperate with you, but we want to see some ID and we want to know why we were taken away. And they didn't answer them at all, which is definitely illegal, and it is just such a cruel thing to do. And after they were kidnapped by the forces that they didn't know anything about, in the plane they tortured Mesut Kaçmaz and their family members. And after they came to Turkey, they said that they would rape his wife and his kids in front of his eyes if he didn't accept that he was a criminal, he was a terrorist by working in his med schools, which is so bad that I can't even imagine how it must have felt for him, because it is just unbelievable that if the same thing happened to my dad, it is so heartbreaking to just sit there and be accused of something you didn't even do and you don't know anything about. And they're saying that they will harm your children, your blood, and they will rape your wife. It's just unbelievable. And thankfully, after so many casualties, after his wife was in jail alone thinking suicidal thoughts, they were able to get outside of that jail cell. And right now their cases are still ongoing and they're still in danger. And now Mesut Kaçmaz is working as a taxi driver like my dad, who was a teacher like him and now working in a flooring store and doing DoorDash in his free times. And it is just so unbelievable to me that so many lawyers, teachers, doctors, and important people are trying to do everything they can to live through and feed their families.
Yes, just like you said, Muazzez, the strength of these people is truly inspiring. It's their determination gives me hope, gives me power to go on, gives me the strength to go on. And another person whose determination inspires me is Zeynep Cetin. So she is a human rights activist and a mother of a cadet who was sentenced to life in prison. So her son was only 19 years old at the time that he was being responsible for participating in the coup attempt, when all he did was get on a military vehicle and ride to a certain spot, certain site in the city, along with his other classmates, with other cadets, based on the orders of his commander. That's all he did. Just get on the vehicle and ride to that part of the city. And just after this happened, he was detained with his classmates, where they were tortured and beaten up before the trial, before their imprisonment. And after they were imprisoned, at one of the contact visits, their parents could not recognize the children's faces because of the beating and the torture. I mean, this is just unbelievable. Some of them lost their eyes and some of them were missing other parts of their bodies, other limbs. And after, more than 3 years of believing that justice will be served for his son and other innocent cadets, Zeynep Cetin decided to make her own voice heard, and she basically started protesting. So she protested at various places with various people, and her protests made quite the impact. So she received death threats, and her husband received threats, which included the entire family, the rest of their children. But those threats did not, stop them from speaking the truth that there was no proper law left in the country. So she kept protesting, and when the government realized that they could not silence her with threats, they instead decided to jail her. So she spent 2 months in prison, I believe. And when she was released from prison, she did not stop protesting. She did not stop telling people all the injustices, the persecutions, the mistreatments, and the tortures that her son and other innocent people, other innocent cadets were experiencing. So she kept, standing up against the wrong actions that left 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds in prisons for life. So
yeah, and to add on to that, the cadets literally didn't do anything. They were ordered to get on that in that car, and they just literally they were arrested. And I remember listening to her story. The supervisors of the cadets were like, they're probably not going to do anything to you, like we're going to be the ones who are in trouble because we're your supervisors. But they didn't care about any of those. They just literally, I remember seeing pictures of the cadets who were beaten severely, and it's really a gruesome image to look at. And I can't believe anyone could like do that to someone who's innocent, who didn't do anything.
They were just practicing their love and working under their government as cadets and soldiers. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely. So go ahead, Leyla.
Oh, yeah, so it's of course so gruesome and terrible, but I also like admire all the people that are speaking up about this and doing their best, especially in Turkey where they're like in so much danger. And one of these people was Halime Gülse, and she was a recent college graduate, and she was a new teacher who taught English at a private high school. And after the coup, the government shut down her school, of course, for no specific reason. And they also revoked the licenses of many teachers, including Halime Gülse. And despite this, and despite knowing that she would definitely get in trouble, perhaps be imprisoned, perhaps even killed, Halima and many of her friends tried to help the children and families of the imprisoned parents, and also the parents who had lost their jobs, because once these people lost their jobs because of being affiliated with the Hizmet movement, no places would hire them, and they could barely make by. But she still did her best to raise money by selling food and hosting festivals. However, for this, she was detained by police in February of 2018. And then she had also been diagnosed with lupus disease all the way back in high school. And her brother sent reports of her disease to the prison that she was staying at. However, the reports supposedly got lost in the transfer, and her medications were never given. And she actually, even in jail, she kept fighting for her rights. She made many petitions asking to get her medication and proper health care. However, these were, of course, all ignored by the jail that she was staying at. And when eventually that she did go to the hospital because she was in such critical condition, she got some tests done, which actually did nothing to prove her disease and were the incorrect tests. Even though she told them specifically which test to do, the doctor again did the wrong test and claimed that she was healthy. And so 2 months after her detainment, she passed away in prison in the hospital that she was sent to. And during this whole process, her mom would constantly call the prison and ask about Halima's health. And however, they just said that she was okay, even though she clearly wasn't. And she was also denied hospital visits for a long time, as I said before. And so, we would think that she would have some good evidence to put her in this position. However, they were just unfound claims. They said that when the police had stormed her house, that they found a newspaper and a notebook that allegedly had texts insulting the president of the United States. And even if this was of Turkey, sorry. And even if this was true, of course, this is still no reason to imprison someone. But of course, the real reason that she was imprisoned was that she wanted to help students and victims of the oppression in Turkey, which was apparently such a bad thing. Clearly not. And even the prosecutor didn't even accuse Halima of anything. They only wanted her to explain why she met with certain people, and like they didn't even have a quote unquote good reason either. And then later in May of 2019, I found that the Association of Human Rights and Solidarity for Oppressed Peoples actually did a report on Halime Gülsü, and even they said that her death was clearly caused by the government's violation of her right to life, which is honestly just really tragic that she still passed away.
It is so unbelievable to me that even doctors, the people who we trust our life with, can be enemies to us and cannot be trusted in these situations just because government said that they were.
Yeah, and to add on to what Leyla said, since when does insulting a president, critiquing a president considered a crime in any sort of country? Like, definitely not in these states.
In the United States, a lot of people have insulted our president, and
Yeah,
you can't arrest someone for insulting the president. That's freedom of speech. The one thing that determines if a country is
there
free
are books
or not.
about just insulting President Trump and nobody's doing anything about
Yes. But yeah, like this is like a torture technique that Turkey has implemented. They're denying medical help to people who need it, and they're just letting them rot away in prison without any help. And the doctors pretty much they don't have a choice either, because if they do something, they're gonna get their license taken away and they're gonna get put into jails.
doing something wrong by helping them. It is so unbelievable because medical services are a human right, no matter the country you're in or no matter the state you're in, but it is just unbelievable.
Another thing I want to talk about is how there's babies in prison right now in Turkey, and some babies have been born in prison and no other different anything. So it's just I remember there's a documentary on DW, and they were documenting two families' lives on and how they have their kids in prison, and the fathers would come on the weekends and they would take their kids to the park, and the moms would have to stay in prison, and the father explaining that to his kid, like, your mom can't come with us, but like the kid's like, why can't she come with us? But eventually the kids start to get used to it, and I can't imagine a kid having to live in prison. A prison is no place for a kid to live, and I just don't understand how people can like have their kids in prison. I don't know.
I wanted to talk about that. It is just so heartbreaking that little kids have to grow up in prison where they don't have any other kid interaction between the other kids in the prison, and they don't know how school feels like, or they don't know how it feels to just play outside and go back to your own home with your own family and maybe drink some water and to just live your moments of childhood.
Yeah.
It truly ruins their entire lives and their future. And this isn't even a close comparison, but when COVID-19 first started and we had to all go into quarantine and lockdown, like I couldn't see my friends for 1 or 2 months max, and that still, like, I miss them so much, and I miss seeing people my age. And so I can't even imagine how it must be for little babies and little kids growing up in those environments where they don't have toys or people their age or friends to play with.
Yeah, like Beyza said, prison is no place for any child to grow up and to be raised in. And I can't imagine the impact. I don't want to imagine the impacts of that prison, the impact that it can have on a child's health, mental health, physical health, the trauma that it can leave the child with. I mean, they can't even see the sky because the yard that they have in the prison, even that yard is, limited, and you can't go to the yard anytime you want to go to the yard. And when you do go to the yard, you can't see the sky properly because it's mostly covered with black nests, so you can only see the birds, the sky, the clouds through black holes. And I don't think any child should go through that.
Yeah, definitely. In the documentary that I was previously talking about, they interviewed a Erdogan supporter, and his support for this thing was that women were getting pregnant on purpose, and then people would feel bad for them because they're pregnant and they have their babies in prison. Like, so this man actually believed what he was saying when he was saying that women are getting pregnant so that they could raise their children in prison. Like, these people have gone so like far onto continuing their support for Erdogan, and it's just become inhumane and it's not acceptable whatsoever. And I just can't believe that he actually believes those words that he says.
I mean, what kind of a mother would do that to her child?
None that I know of, but yeah. Before we end our event for today, is there anything that you guys would want to say for the people listening right now?
I want to mention that we are starting a new path with doing things like this and being the voice of the people who can't speak or who can talk about the situation around the world, and that we as a new generation should keep doing this for their sake and for our sake. And I know that we cannot sleep and rest nice because peace is not within ourselves but within other people, and we will not rest easy or not speak up until every little torture in world ends.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank you too. And you know, for us to be able to work through those problems as a new generation, I think we have to be conscious of those problems. We have to acknowledge that we have a problem in order to take the first step at solving that problem. So I think it's really important that we and other people talk about the tortures, the injustices going on in anywhere in the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, we have to be the voice of the voiceless. We have to speak up for the people who can't speak up for themselves. And if we don't do it, who will do it? So thank you to everyone. Thank you to our panelists for joining today, and thank you guys for listening to us. Although we may not be able to fix the situation in Turkey right now, we can try our best to spread awareness. There are fundraisers and petitions you can sign as well if you would like to help. Like, you can go watch videos on Huddled M, you could watch videos on ASL and so many other resources online where you can donate. Please feel free to go to huddledm.org to learn more and listen to more stories. I just want to thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I would like to thank everyone too. Thank you so much.